Yesterday changed something inside me that I don't think can ever go back to normal. I keep replaying it in my head, trying to convince myself there's a logical explanation, something simple, something harmless. But every time I reach the same point, my thoughts stop, like my mind refuses to go further. Because what I saw didn't make sense. And the worst part is, it didn't feel unfamiliar. I live a quiet life. At least, that's what I used to believe. My days were predictable: wake up, make tea, scroll through messages that never really mattered, wait for him to come home. There was comfort in that routine, even if it had started to feel empty lately. He wasn't the same anymore. The man who once noticed every little thing about me had slowly become someone who barely looked up from his phone when I spoke. Conversations turned into short replies. Smiles became rare. And excuses became constant. At first, I told myself it was stress. Work pressure. Everyone goes through phases like that. That's what I repeated in my head every night while lying next to him, staring at the ceiling, feeling the distance growing between us even when he was right there. He started sleeping later than usual, always turning his back to me, his phone lighting up the darkness with messages he never explained. When I asked, he would sigh, annoyed, as if I was the problem. As if my questions were unreasonable. "You overthink too much," he said once, without even looking at me. That sentence stayed with me longer than it should have. It made me question myself. Maybe I was overthinking. Maybe I was creating problems that didn't exist. So I stopped asking. I stopped looking. I convinced myself that peace was better than truth. But something in the house started to feel off. By evening, I felt restless. I couldn't explain it. Every sound made me alert. Every shadow felt sharper. I told myself to calm down, to stop letting my imagination take control. I even laughed at myself at one point, trying to shake off the tension. But then night came. And everything changed. I was in my room, sitting on the edge of the bed, when I heard it. Footsteps. Soft, slow, deliberate. Not outside. Not in another part of the house. Inside. Close. My body froze instantly, every muscle tightening as my mind tried to catch up with what I was hearing. The steps weren't rushed. They weren't hesitant. Whoever it was, they were walking like they belonged there. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just listened. The sound came closer. Right to my door. For a second, there was silence. And then the door opened. Not loudly. Not forcefully. Just slowly, like someone who knew exactly what they were doing. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat, but I couldn't look away. I couldn't even blink. 2 boys walked in. They didn't run. They didn't sneak. They just entered. Calm. Quiet. Like this was normal. Like they had done this before. I couldn't see their faces clearly, not at first. The light was dim, and something about them felt distant. Not blurred, not hidden, just hard to focus on, like my eyes refused to fully understand what I was seeing. One of them was slightly taller. The other stayed a step behind him. Neither of them spoke. They didn't even look surprised to see me. That's what scared me the most. They looked around the room, casually, like they were searching for something, or maybe just observing. My throat felt dry. I wanted to say something, to ask who they were, how they got in, why they were here. But no words came out. It was like my voice had disappeared. Then, for a brief moment, the taller one looked directly at me. And in that second, something shifted inside me. It wasn't fear. Not exactly. It was recognition. A strange, uncomfortable feeling, like I had seen that look before, somewhere, sometime, but I couldn't place it. It didn't make sense, and yet it felt real enough to make my chest tighten. Before I could react, before I could even process what was happening, they turned and walked out. Just like that. No noise. No rush. The door remained slightly open behind them. And I was left sitting there, completely still, questioning everything I thought I understood about my own life. For a long time, I didn't move. I just stared at the door, waiting for something else to happen. But nothing did. The house went silent again, like it always was. Except this time, I knew something had changed. Because this wasn't in my head. And whatever had just happened, it wasn't the beginning. It felt like something I had missed for a long time. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them again, those two boys walking in like they belonged there, like I was the one out of place. I kept telling myself it had to be stress, something my mind created after weeks of tension and doubt. But no matter how hard I tried to believe that, one thing kept pulling me back to reality. The door. It was still slightly open in the morning. I remember getting up slowly, my body heavy, my thoughts scattered. I stood there for a moment, staring at that gap, trying to recall if I had left it like that. I never do. I'm careful about things like that. I always double-check, especially at night. But this time, it wasn't how I left it. That was the first crack in the lie I had been telling myself. I walked through the house, checking everything. Windows locked. Main door secured. Nothing broken, nothing forced. No sign that anyone had entered from outside. It didn't make sense. If they were real, then how did they get in? And if they weren't, then how did the door open? My chest felt tight again, but this time it wasn't just fear. It was something heavier. Something that had been building long before last night. Doubt. I tried to distract myself, but my mind kept connecting things I had ignored before. The late nights. The silence. The way he avoided eye contact when I asked simple questions. The way he made me feel like I was the one creating problems. It all started to feel less like coincidence and more like a pattern I refused to see. When he came home that evening, I watched him carefully. Every movement. Every expression. He walked in like nothing had happened, like the world hadn't shifted for me overnight. He asked the usual questions, the same routine words, but something about his tone felt distant, almost rehearsed. I didn't confront him directly. Not yet. Instead, I asked something simple. Did you come home last night? He paused for a fraction of a second. Most people wouldn't notice it. But I did. No, he said, too quickly. Why would I? I shrugged, pretending it didn't matter. But inside, something sank deeper. That pause wasn't confusion. It was calculation. Later that night, when he was in the shower, I did something I had never done before. Something I once believed I would never need to do. I checked his phone. At first, it felt wrong, like I was crossing a line. But that feeling disappeared the moment I unlocked it. There were messages he never showed me. Conversations saved under names I didn't recognize. Some deleted, but not completely gone. Enough fragments remained to tell a story he had been hiding. There was someone else. The tone in those messages was different from anything he had used with me in months. Soft. Attentive. Present. It was like reading words from a version of him I no longer knew. My hand started shaking, but I kept scrolling, forcing myself to see everything. And then I found something that made my breath stop completely. Photos. Not random, not harmless. Intentional. Personal. In one of them, he was sitting on a couch, relaxed, smiling in a way I hadn't seen in a long time. And next to him were two boys. My heart dropped so suddenly it felt like the ground disappeared beneath me. I stared at that image, trying to deny it, trying to convince myself it was something else. But I knew. I recognized them, even though the picture was clearer than what I saw last night. The same presence. The same quiet stillness in their expressions. The same boys. My mind raced, trying to make sense of it. Who were they? Why were they with him? Why had he never mentioned them? And the question that terrified me the most, how were they in my room? I quickly put the phone back before he came out, but it didn't matter. The truth was already there, sitting heavy inside me. Everything I had ignored, everything I had doubted, was no longer something I could push away. When he sat next to me later, talking casually like always, I couldn't look at him the same way. I kept hearing his words from before, "You overthink too much." But now, it sounded different. Not like reassurance. Like control. I wanted to confront him right then, throw everything in his face, demand answers. But something stopped me. Instinct, maybe. Or fear of what I might hear. So I stayed quiet. But inside, everything was changing. That night, the silence in the house felt heavier than ever. I didn't turn off the lights. I didn't lie down. I just sat there, waiting without fully admitting that I was waiting. Because now I knew they were real. And if they had come once, they could come again. Time passed slowly, every second stretching longer than it should. My eyes kept moving toward the door, my body tense, my mind filled with questions I wasn't ready to answer. And then, just when I thought maybe it wouldn't happen again, I heard it. Footsteps. The same slow, deliberate sound. Closer this time. I didn't freeze like before. I didn't hide. I stayed exactly where I was, staring at the door as the handle moved slightly. This time, I wasn't just afraid. I was ready to see the truth, no matter how much it hurt. I didn't look away this time. My eyes stayed fixed on the door as it slowly opened, the same controlled movement, the same unnatural calm. My heartbeat was steady, not because I wasn't afraid, but because something inside me had already accepted that whatever was coming next would change everything. They stepped in again. Clearer now. No shadows hiding them, no distance blurring the details. 2 boys, just like before. One slightly taller, the other quieter, staying half a step behind. Their clothes were simple, nothing unusual, but their presence carried a weight that made the room feel smaller. This time, I stood up. My legs felt weak, but I forced myself forward, closing the distance between us. Every instinct told me to stop, to keep space, but I needed answers more than I needed comfort. "Who are you?" I asked. My voice didn't shake. That surprised me. They didn't respond immediately. The taller one looked at me again, holding my gaze longer than before. There was no fear in his eyes. No confusion. Just a strange calm, like he already knew something I didn't. Then he spoke. "We wanted to see you." That was it. No hesitation, no explanation. Just a sentence that made everything inside me tighten. "See me," I repeated, trying to keep my voice steady. "Why?" The younger one shifted slightly, glancing at the other before looking back at me. "Because he talks about you." My chest felt like it caved in from the inside. He. There was no need to ask who they meant. The connection snapped into place so suddenly it almost made me dizzy. My thoughts raced back to the photos, the messages, the hidden pieces of a life I had only just started to uncover. "You know him?" I asked, even though I already knew the answer. They both nodded. "How?" The silence that followed was heavier than anything I had felt before. It stretched just long enough to make the truth unbearable before it was even spoken. "He's our father." The words landed without warning, sharp and final. For a moment, everything went quiet, like the world itself had paused to let it sink in. I stared at them, searching for something that would prove this wasn't real. A crack, a hesitation, anything. There was nothing. Just 2 boys standing in front of me, telling the truth without even realizing how much damage it carried. My mind tried to fight it. Tried to rearrange the facts into something less painful. But it was useless. Every doubt I had buried, every sign I had ignored, every moment I had questioned myself came rushing back all at once. This wasn't just betrayal. This was a life built without me. I took a step back, my breath unsteady now despite my effort to stay composed. "Why are you here?" I asked again, but this time it came out differently. Not just a question. A demand. The taller one answered. "We were curious." "About what?" "About you." The simplicity of it made it worse. "What about me?" He hesitated for the first time, like he was choosing his words carefully. "He said you wouldn't understand." That broke something. A quiet, deep break that didn't show on the outside but spread quickly through everything I thought I knew. I turned away for a second, pressing my hand against my forehead, trying to steady myself. He didn't think I would understand. Or maybe, he didn't want me to know. Footsteps behind me shifted slightly, and when I turned back, they were still there, still watching me, still calm. "Does she know about me?" I asked before I could stop myself. They looked at each other. And that was enough of an answer. I felt it then. Not just anger, not just pain. Something colder. Something clearer. The realization that I hadn't just been lied to, I had been erased. Reduced to something hidden, something separate from the life he chose to build somewhere else. I grabbed my phone without thinking and walked out, my hands moving faster than my thoughts. He answered on the third ring. "Where are you?" I asked. "At work," he replied instantly. The lie was so effortless it almost made me laugh. "Come home," I said. There was a pause. "Why?" "Just come home." I ended the call before he could say anything else. When I turned back, the boys were gone. No sound. No movement. Just empty space where they had been standing. But this time, I didn't question it. I didn't chase after them. It didn't matter how they came or how they left. What mattered was what they brought with them. The truth. He came back faster than usual. I could see it in the way he opened the door, slightly out of breath, his expression tight, controlled. He knew something was wrong. Maybe not everything, but enough. "What happened?" he asked, trying to sound calm. I looked at him for a long moment before speaking. Really looked at him, without the filter of love or denial. "Who are they?" I asked. He frowned. "Who?" "Don't do that," I said quietly. "Don't lie again." Something shifted in his expression. Not surprise. Not confusion. Recognition. It was subtle, but it was there. "I saw them," I continued. "And I saw the photos." Silence filled the space between us. Heavy, unavoidable. He ran a hand through his hair, looking away for a second before meeting my eyes again. And in that moment, I knew. He wasn't going to deny it anymore. "They're my sons," he said. No hesitation this time. No excuses. Just the truth, delivered too late to matter. I felt the words settle inside me, not as a shock anymore, but as confirmation. Everything I had feared, everything I had tried to ignore, now standing right in front of me without any disguise. "How long?" I asked. He didn't answer immediately. That hesitation told me more than any number he could have given. "Long enough," I said, finishing it for him. He exhaled slowly, like he had been holding it in for too long. "I didn't want to hurt you." The sentence felt empty. "You already did," I replied. There was nothing left to protect. No illusion left to hold on to. Just the truth, raw and undeniable, standing between us like a wall that had always been there. I just refused to see it. After that, there wasn't much left to say. The truth had already done its damage, and no explanation could soften it. He stood there, waiting for something, maybe a reaction, maybe forgiveness, maybe a chance to fix what he had broken. But I didn't give him anything. Not anger, not tears, not even raised words. Just silence. Because for the first time, I understood everything clearly. All the confusion, all the doubt, all the moments I blamed myself for feeling too much suddenly made sense. It was never in my head. It was never overthinking. It was instinct trying to warn me while I kept choosing comfort over truth. "I didn't know how to tell you," he said, his voice quieter now, almost careful. I looked at him, really looked at him, and realized something that hurt more than the betrayal itself. I didn't recognize him anymore. Not because he had changed overnight, but because I had been seeing a version of him that didn't exist. "You didn't want to tell me," I corrected. "That's different." He didn't argue. He couldn't. There was a long pause, the kind that usually feels uncomfortable, but this time it felt final. Like something had ended without needing to be announced. "Does she know about me?" I asked. He hesitated again. That same hesitation that had followed every truth I had to drag out of him. "Yes," he admitted. The answer didn't shock me. At this point, nothing could. But it confirmed something deeper, that I had been the only one living in a lie. Everyone else already knew their place in this story. Except me. I nodded slowly, more to myself than to him. It wasn't acceptance. It was understanding. A quiet realization that I had been standing in the middle of something that was never truly mine. You should go, I said. He blinked, caught off guard. What? You heard me. This is your reaction, he asked, almost confused. You're just ending it like this. I almost smiled, but there was nothing humorous about it. It didn't end today, I said calmly. It ended a long time ago. I just didn't see it. That was the moment something shifted in him. Not guilt, not regret, something closer to discomfort. Maybe he expected a fight. Maybe he expected me to beg for answers or demand explanations. But I didn't have the energy for that anymore. He tried one last time. We can figure this out. No, I said, cutting him off gently but firmly. You already did. You figured it out without me. There was nothing left after that. No dramatic exit, no raised voices. He just stood there for a few seconds, as if waiting for me to change my mind, and when I didn't, he turned and walked out. The door closed behind him with a quiet finality that felt heavier than any loud slam ever could. And just like that, the house was silent again. But this silence was different. It wasn't filled with confusion or fear. It wasn't heavy with unanswered questions. It was clear. Still. Honest. I walked back into my room slowly, taking in everything around me. The same walls, the same furniture, the same space, but it didn't feel the same anymore. For the first time, it felt like mine. I noticed small things I hadn't paid attention to before. The way the light fell across the floor. The quiet hum of the air. The absence of tension that I had grown so used to that I didn't even realize it was there. I sat on the edge of the bed again, the same place where everything had started, but I wasn't the same person anymore. My mind went back to the boys. This time, the memory didn't bring fear. It brought clarity. They weren't intruders. They weren't something unknown or unexplainable. They were part of a truth that had been hidden from me. A truth that found its way into my life whether I was ready for it or not. I thought about the way they looked at me. Not with guilt, not with fear. Just curiosity. Like they were trying to understand where I fit into something that was already complete without me. And that's when it fully settled in. I was the outsider. Not them. Not her. Me. Strangely, that realization didn't break me the way I expected it to. It didn't feel like rejection anymore. It felt like release. Because if I was never truly part of it, then I wasn't losing anything real. I stood up and started moving around the room, slowly at first, then with more purpose. I opened drawers, cleared out things that reminded me of him, not out of anger, but out of necessity. It wasn't about erasing memories. It was about making space for something honest. Something that didn't require me to question my own reality. Time passed, but I didn't rush anything. For once, I allowed myself to feel everything fully, without suppressing it, without trying to make it smaller than it was. There was pain. Of course there was. But it wasn't overwhelming anymore. It was sharp, clear, and strangely grounding. By the time I was done, the room felt different. Not empty. Free. I walked to the door and paused for a moment, my hand resting lightly against it. Yesterday, that door had opened to something I didn't understand. Something that forced me to see the truth I had been avoiding. Today, it was just a door. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of what was on the other side. I opened it and stepped out, not because I had everything figured out, but because I didn't need to stay in a place built on lies anymore. Yesterday, 2 boys entered my room without permission. But today, I walked out of a life that was never truly mine.